Welcome to Healthier, Happier You, the people working to make it happen. I'm Evan J. Cholfin from Luxhammer, where we help the brands that help you live healthier. Today, I'm joined by Dr. Stephen Bloembergen, a true pioneer in biomaterials innovation. As the founder of GreenMark Biomedical, he's leveraged 30 years of experience to revolutionize dental care. He's not just an innovator, he's the mind behind 25 patent families and led Ecosynthetics to become Canada's largest clean tech IPO. Dr. Bloombergen, welcome.
Hi, Evan. Thank you for having me.
So, you founded Ecosynthetics in 1996 and scaled it to produce 200 million pounds of starch nanoparticles annually. What lessons from that massive scale up are you applying to GreenMark?
Great question. So, most nanoparticles are produced at sub-gram quantities and costs thousands of dollars per very tiny amount. And what we did was take America's largest crop material, starch. And you can see the ski hill behind me. My passion is downhill skiing and entrepreneurship and biomaterials. And I grew up in Europe, and I didn't need any studies 40 years ago that showed us that climate change was real. Seeing the glaciers disappearing at alarming rates then already. So I really had a passion for the environment and wanted to have something that's bio-based. And so we scaled up this manufacturing of starch and nanoparticles, which really actually was a fluke invention. We initially had made these particles in a small mixer in the lab and then found we could actually produce them in an extruder. So, make a long story short, we scaled it up to the number you mentioned, over 200 million pound per year production in the US and Europe. And we're still selling that all over the world to make paper and wood to get away from the formaldehyde based wood adhesives. And paper mills were saving $1 million a year. And that's what allowed us to take that company public. So lessons learned was, I don't think we realized how fortunate we were at the time, but Cargill invested as our strategic partner, and they had no special rights, put their best man on our board. Just amazing to have his input over all those years until we went public in 2011. So we did two major rounds. It's very expensive to make materials and sell it all over the world, to conduct these mill trials and all that. So lessons learned. I started that company here in Lansing, Michigan, with a vision for the environment, and then really wanted to expand that vision to health and environment. But we didn't have the public mandate. Once we went public on the Toronto Stock Exchange, I had to start a new company to pursue this dental application we're talking about today.
Wow. So in 2016, you founded GreenMark with a vision to deliver health benefits through biobased targeting. What sparked this transition from industrial applications to healthcare?
Definitely passion for biomaterials and health care. We had an NIH grant for anti-cancer drug delivery in early 2000. And then we got that investment from Cargill in 2003. So we got very busy with scaling up. And one year it was in foreign countries all over the world, 82 days out of the year, trying to roll that technology out. And so we got a little distracted. Then in 2009, we hired a really bright student at University of Waterloo undergraduate nano engineering program, where I was on the board for that program. That program was funded, by the way, by Mike Lazaridis and his partner from BlackBerry. So they put 100 million and leveraged that with government money to start this major nano center. So it was a bubble of energy and activity. And I told him we had a grant. So we got a grant with 4 profs at the University of Waterloo. And I told him, you should stay here, do your PhD here. And he said, no. I want to go to the US. I said, okay, I live in the US, so I'll support you. And he ended up at University of Michigan working on anti-cancer drug delivery, targeted anti-cancer drug delivery using our particles at Ecosynthetics. And then this prof from the Department of the School of Dentistry at the University of Michigan came and wanted to learn about these starch particles that Nathan was working on. So the student's name is Nathan Jones. He's now our vice president of technology at GreenMark. And he, back then in 2015, invented this concept that we could target starch particles, the same particles we're using these high volume paper applications and wood binders. We could take those and put a positive charge on them. So they're literally attracted like a magnet into the subsurface of teeth. Before I ever even got into this whole area of dentistry myself, Brian Clarkson is his name. He's a karyologist. He's still part of our advisory team. He understood that by the time we see decay on x-ray, it's already too late. You typically have to drill and fill. And the challenge with that is once you drill into a tooth, you condemn it to a lifetime of restoration. So the way I look at that is that I think dentistry has been very reactive in the management of care. And what we really are seeing a shift 30 plus years ago in medicine, but now we're seeing it in dentistry, and it's a real big new wave that's happening, is preventive care. And what stood in the way is the ability to find the disease early and then to treat it non-invasively. And that's what we've been able to accomplish with our technology.
That's amazing. So what makes your nanosponge technology unique in the dental care space?
The key thing that Nathan discovered was that early stage caries lesion, before you get a cavity, they're a white spot. So the reason they're a white spot, there's these voids in the enamel. That's void spaces. That is, no, the cover of the tooth is the enamel, and you see the white spot because those voids are open. And when you treat that with fluoride, it can in fact arrest that lesion, but it will never really cure the subsurface. And by the time you see it on the x-ray, you see a little shadow. I can show you images of teeth that have, tiny little shadows in between the teeth or underneath the biting surface. And it's already way into the dentin layer underneath or into the pulp, God forbid, all the way there causing trouble. And so we have images of teeth that had to be extracted because of the severe pain and discomfort. And when you stain the decay, you can see that even if it's an apparently early lesion on x-ray, it's already all the way into the dentin and the pulp. We decided if we shift things forward, we can literally treat it non-invasively and treat the enamel before it moves into the dentin and the pulp and causes major issues. And so what Nathan showed was that the subsurface of an early stage porous lesion in enamel is negatively charged. And the way he found this out is that he put the opposite charge on our particles with a fluorescent dye attached. The same dye you use in ophthalmology called fluorescein. And then he used this simple blue light that every dental practice has, orange glasses to protect your eyes, but also to visualize that fluorescence. Apply the rinse with those particles in there, and then rinse it with water afterwards. So only the subsurface illuminated. If our particles are able to get in and attracted by the sort of magnet attraction force of the negatively charged lesion, then we knew that that was an actively progressing lesion because it was open, porous, and it would keep advancing towards a cavity if you don't do anything about it.
So who are your ideal early adopters among dental professionals?
That's another really great question. If you read the business books, you have the early adopters, the followers, and the laggards. In any industry you go, and I've lived that, and I've developed a real antenna for seeing who's an early adopter. If they want to know who else is using this and need 50 references, then you know you're not dealing with an early adopter. If they will sign your NDA on the spot, don't question it, simply sign yours, don't need theirs. And they're so excited to come up with all these other ideas, then you know you've got an early adopter. It's definitely been challenging in dentistry because, yes, there are early adopters everywhere, but in healthcare, 8+% is driven by solid reimbursement for procedures and care and medications. In dentistry, it's very different. So as much as 50-60% is out-of-pocket pay, and many procedures are not covered. So what we learned is that we first commercialized our diagnostic product. We got it as a class 2 medical device through FDA called Lumicare Caries Detection Rinse. Here you see a box. It's got these pouches inside. So right here, it's a 20 ml rinse. The reimbursement for this was terrible. So even when the dentist said, you should use this, now we can use a treatment that's non-invasive and we can avoid drill and fill. Patient says, yeah, that sounds great. And then the question comes, is it covered by insurance? And if the answer is no, they probably say maybe next time. So that became a big challenge for us. And now, fortunately, on the treatment side, there are really good reimbursement. So we took a pivot. We decided to introduce the treatment product. And like my last company with Cargill, they had no special rights. We basically were able to take this company, Dentulu, and co-brand the package. So it's a non-exclusive deal where we can now go to many other companies, do large orders, like 100,000 doses. So let me explain what I mean by that. So here's a package. You open it up. You take the strip. It's like the Listerine strip, the breast strip.
Mm-hmm.
You open this up, and out comes this strip here. It's white. And then you basically lick your teeth or you moisten the teeth and you overlay it. It sticks immediately to it. So rather than the Listerine strip which you put on your tongue, here you put it on your teeth. Our particles are inside here, and they contain, in this case, not the fluorescent dye, but in this case, the building blocks of enamel. And then it dissolves. So let me apply it. There you go. I fold it. You can see it almost. Another minute, and you won't see it anymore. It's already starting to dissolve. It turns transparent right away. So now our particles are being dissolved, reconstituted in the saliva because of the positive charge that are attracted into the teeth. And then they deliver the enamel component, calcium and phosphate. And as soon as you put calcium and phosphate in soluble form next to each other, they form enamel, which is called calcium phosphate or hydroxyapatite. So how does that compare to all the other products, for example, all the other toothpaste that have all these beautiful claims? You will walk into the grocery store, you see this is going to whiten your teeth, it's going to, give you healthy gums, it's going to, remineralize. Well, most of that is great marketing, but really thin on the science side. So a lot of these products contain either calcium phosphate or fluoride. And because fluoride is negatively charged, it's actually repelled from that early stage porous lesion in enamel. Fluoride will arrest a lesion, especially if you have high dose fluoride like varnish, that's 22,600 ppm or 5 weight percent sodium fluoride. The reason they call it 5 weight percent sodium fluoride as opposed to 22,600 ppm, which is exactly the same fluoride, is that it's a smaller number. It's great marketing. But the truth is it's a very high dose of fluoride that will seal the surface and potentially arrest that lesion. So now you have a lesion with a sealed top, but the white spot remains, and it can, of course, be prone to reactivating. Caries is a disease where bacteria in your mouth have a party. They produce acid on the surface of your teeth. The acid seeps in. This is from the fermentation of the sugar, and that creates that initial porosity until it keeps making the subsurface more and more porous until eventually it collapses, and that's how you get a cavity. So our whole premise was find it before you have the cavity, because then you can still repair it non-invasively, and then treat it with the not little insoluble rocks that are in all of the other toothpastes, calcium phosphate or hydroxyapatite. It's very insoluble. How insoluble? 10 to the minus gazillion insoluble. It's incredibly insoluble. Instead, we have the calcium and phosphate ions that are reacted onto the starch that's now being released into my teeth, whether it's in the dentinal tubules if you have recession, or through the pores of the enamel where the white spot is. And then it's recrystallizing the subsurface. And that's essentially a true treatment of both hypersensitivity and early stage caries disease.
So, what's been your biggest challenge in bringing this innovation to market?
It's a number of fronts. First time we as a company, in my last company, we didn't produce medical devices. So I had to learn all that. And one thing we always did very well at Ecosynthetics was to hire the best, find the best consultants. People often who are close to retirement are already retired, have worked their whole career in dentistry. And then all of a sudden, the monkey's off our shoulders. We show up with these renowned people and everybody loves us to come visit. So we did that in paper mills as part of Ecosynthetics. And now we're doing that at GreenMark with dentists, dental experts. We've got a whole team of advisors with different backgrounds. And so we had to learn how to produce a medical device. You have a lot of checks and balances, how to take it through FDA, get FDA clearance, which can be very expensive and time consuming. And all of these things we've done successfully. We've patented, so we can go all over the world with this. And we learned at Ecosynthetics that if you have global patents, the large companies will respect that, and you can really benefit. And all of these are key components. Initial invention, the patenting, then you publish results in leading peer-reviewed journals. So we've done that. So, for example, the subsurface remineralization we just published in December in JADA Foundational Science, which is a journal of the American Dental Association, and all we've published in Nature journals, etc. And then that's how you get the word out to the experts. And then you have your main customer base, which are GP dentists and pediatric dentists. They don't think like the caryologists who are the expert in caries disease. So you have to go to conferences, you have to go to meetings, present, and all of that we've done. And then once you have all those, you've got your process, you got to scale up your process. Now, that's something I've done my whole career. Instead of having to make 200 million pounds per year for a binder for paper or wood, we're doing everything in a lab. So it's really refreshing for me as an entrepreneur to be able to scale up in a small reactor and to make these particles and to incorporate the calcium and the phosphate. And then last but not least, if you do all these things right, you need funding. And so we've raised to date 8.6 million through a seed round, through 8 funds here in Michigan. And now we're actively raising our Series A to really be able to go to the next stage, scale up the technology, invest in the marketing. Cargill had no special rights. I realized the way I can take this company public so we can really take it all over the world is that we need to have multiple partners, distribution partners. So then Tulu was the first company in 2-year time who agreed to a non-exclusive deal to sell this. And then they brought us Great Oral Health. So we did another large sale to them. So now I have a model to go all over the world with non-exclusive distributorships. And then we co-brand that so that if we ever get acquired, we have recognition for Crystal Care is the name of the product. And we are the manufacturing record on the back, as you can see. So lots of irons that you have to have in the fire, and you have to fire on all cylinders, so to speak, to be successful.
What would you say makes it challenging to stand out in the dental technology space?
I think it requires building a reputation, right? It's really getting the customer feedback. And maybe an interesting sidebar is that we had all these grants from the dental division of the National Institutes of Health for caries treatment, but FDA has no claims for caries treatment. So how are you going to do that? You can't even on your marketing literature say, hey, we are actually benefiting the treatment of early stage caries lesions. So the varnish that I mentioned earlier, the fluoride varnish, that is approved through FDA as a class 2 medical device for sensitivity treatment. So when I first found out about this, being new to medical devices and FDA clearance processes, I was very upset about this because, come on, guys, we need to make it simple. Now we're seeing that fluoride is becoming less popular in a lot of circles. It used to just be the biological dentist and some parents. But there was the ruling in California by this district judge, who basically showed that people are not controlling fluoride very well in water. So there was a study where that showed that double the amount, which is very low, it's 0.7 ppm, 0.7 ppm in drinking water, which was first actually applied here in Grand Rapids, does help arrest lesions. So if you're on well water and you don't brush your teeth, you don't have other sources, or you don't have good oral hygiene, especially children can really suffer from this. But what they showed, that is there are a number of studies that show there's a correlation between double the dose of fluoride in drinking water and an IQ loss in children, young children. So now we've seen with the new government coming in, we see fluoride becoming a lot less popular. And in fact, some states, the first one I think was Utah, is now taking fluoride out of their drinking water. that could really potentially impact children and adult tooth health if we don't have any alternatives. So what we have is the ability to remineralize the subsurface of teeth without using fluoride. So this is a fluoride-free product. And that's why I was so upset. Come on, guys. We've got all this funding. We're trying to get through FDA. We can't even get a claim around caries treatment. But we could get a claim around sensitivity treatment. So we basically started testing for sensitivity. And there's all kinds of third-party tests. And it turns out it works really well. So let me explain that. So if you have recession, which I now do, I'm no longer a spring chicken. I have recession, and what it does, it exposes the tubules at the base of your teeth, the dentinal tubules. So that's where you run out of enamel, and then when the gums recede, those tubules are exposed, and you drink hot or cold water, then you get all this stimuli that go right to the nerve endings inside the tooth. It's very uncomfortable. So we learned that when you actually use our product, it fills up those dentinal tubules with calcium phosphate or hydroxyapatite, which is the main component of both enamel and dentin underneath. And that worked really well. FDA told us, don't come to us and say your starch particles are doing the blocking. We need to see evidence that you're creating a mineral that's blocking those tubules. And we did that clearance. And now we're getting all this use by dentists, not only in professional applications, but with patients who don't want fluoride. They're, when it's only in the enamel, you can't feel anything. So patients come to the dentist when they have sensitivity. So it turns out, thank you, FDA. I come full circle. Thank you, because we would have never thought of the sensitivity application. It works really well, and it's actually leading people to use the product. So in each box, you've got 14 of these strips. And one strip will treat the sensitivity, but if you keep applying it, it will also start treating the caries and strengthen your enamel.
That's great. Some of it is not being able to make claims about the caries prevention. That's making things more difficult, it sounds like.
But what we learned is that we have integrity. We're not going to do things we're not supposed to do. We have values. We do what we have to adhere to the rules of the game. But what we learned is that the dentist can say whatever they want because they're independent third party now. So the dentist goes to their patient. We have many dentists now that are really excited about the sensitivity treatment, but they also use it for remineralization, knowing that there just isn't a lot of products out there that work well for either one. Now, there are toothpaste that claim sensitivity treatment out there, some very popular ones. They're more or less like Tylenol for your teeth, and they have some fluoride in it, which allows them to talk about strengthening enamel, but it wears off after a day. And so what's very different, we're seeing like 1 or 2 strips, and dentists haven't had to reapply for going on 12 months and 6 months when they come back to visit. That Amazing. We had never expected that. And so then if somebody starts using the product for multiple weeks, then it also treats the enamel and turns around and lets you remineralize the subsurface.
That's great. What are your main growth targets for 2025?
So I'm taking a chapter out of my last book, and because we went public on the Toronto Stock Exchange, we had looked at NASDAQ, incorporated here in Michigan, the previous company, looked at NASDAQ, and a lot of the people on my board were Canadian. We got a big grant funded in Canada, so we ultimately chose for TSX, thinking we might raise a few million. And we raised over 100 billion, as you mentioned in the intro. We were just like shocked and could really build a company out globally. So as a result of that success, it's still Canada's largest clean tech IPO. The TSX Ventures has been, approaching me and saying you could really be successful in IPOing first on TSX Ventures out of the Chicago office. So they have a mandate to bring in American companies, and those companies, I think around over 200 last time I talked to, have raised 5 to 10 million within 6 months at a fraction of the cost of going public on any other exchange. And then as an American company, you have to list on a US exchange within 12 months. So now all of a sudden I can talk to my investors that you will have the benefit of long-term capital gains because we will go public, you have an exit, and we'll actually list on NASDAQ within a year. So that's really the job that needs to get done now. Get that investment secured so we can scale up our manufacturing. And I'm talking a small reactor will allow me to make millions of doses. So right now I'm doing this out of the tiny little reactor. It's amazing. And then the packaging partner makes this package for us. But basically, with just a minor investment, we can really grow the company globally and supply the treatment all over the world. So what we've decided on the diagnostic product carries detection. We're going to take the water out. We're going to scale this up, take cost out. And if there's not good reimbursements for diagnosis, we're just going to make it a no-brainer, make it very inexpensive. We just got a grant 2 weeks ago, SBIR grant, Small Business Innovative Research Grant, to pursue a camera that's AI driven that allows us to detect with this product, this LumiCare product that fluoresces the early lesion. So that camera will be key in really making this a no-brainer for dentists, where they can now track and monitor disease, not only identify the initial disease, but also monitor disease progression and show that the treatment actually works.
So, how are you planning to expand your distribution channels?
I mean, there's many options. There's the big worldwide Henry Scheins and Pattersons of the world. When they come knocking, we, of course, always will have a discussion. But when you're small, you're better off initially going out with these smaller ones. And then by having a non-exclusive deal, we can do this over and over and over again in different geographic regions. And so my last company, we sold all over the world. You're much better off dealing with the local companies who know the customer base. And in this case, that's very much true as well. So we don't know any dentist in South America or Europe or Asia, but by partnering with the right strategic distributors, we can share in the upside and still keep the cost really low. So right now, this product here is selling for $39.99 online on Amazon, but it's sold to the dentist for much less than that, so they can make a nice profit on it. So the dentist can then choose to basically apply it for free. If you're a customer and you're very wealthy, okay, maybe I can charge you more. You have reimbursement. But if you don't have reimbursement and you're a lower socioeconomic class, then you might actually need this more than anyone else. And the dentist can choose to make no profit on it or even give it away for free at a very low cost per dose.
That's great. And what's your strategy for entering international markets?
First, you need the regulatory clearance for each market. So that's why we're trying to raise a Series A to not only scale up, but also do more and more clinical studies and pursue the regulatory requirements. Having regulatory clearance in the US is well recognized globally, but it varies. When you go to Europe, it's different. It's country by country. You have to get the CE mark. UK and Ireland are a little separate from that. And then Canada is different altogether as well. You need a small clinical study, etc. Working with the right regulatory advisors and rolling that out appropriately, and then setting up those distributions is really the way we see this developing as soon as we have our Series A investment.
How are you currently acquiring most of your dental practice customers?
Right now, these companies, Dentulu, they have dentists all across North America. They have a large customer base. So it's a nice, friendly way to make the dentist a hero. So you're marketing to both patients and dentists. And we know from the Invisalign story that when you advertise to patients, they drive change much more quickly with the dentist. A lot of dentists just sort of practice what they learned in dental school, but the younger guard, less than 45, I would say, dentists have all learned about preventive care. It is a lifestyle disease like diabetes. So just because you have a treatment doesn't mean the disease will go away. There will always be a need for drilling and filling. But as we see things shifting forward towards preventative care, I think we're going to see a huge impact. So what we're telling dentists, and so we're assisting these, to answer your question, we're assisting Great Orals and Tooling, their marketing efforts. We go speak about it. And what we tell dentists is that anywhere from 100 to 200 million Americans don't go to the dentist. This is based on 88 data. So I'm from the Netherlands originally. Everybody goes to the dentist, maybe the oddball who is scared. But in the US, the number one reason people don't go to the dentist is cost. Number two is fear. Even like the reimbursement for a crown, it used to be crown cost $100 or $150. Today it's one to two to $3,000 per crown, and that benefit is still the same, $1,000 for $50 annual benefit. So the cost of dental care is keeping a lot of people away, and then the fear doesn't help either. So we're telling dentists that you can actually, if you shift the care forward, make more money. You can obviously make money on selling this. We showed them how to get each dental clinic can make over $100,000 per year, depending on the makeup of the clinic, of course. But if you have an average of 2,500 patients, even at 30% of their patients, they will make over $100,000 of additional revenue. But when your reputation starts building as preventative and more people come to you, which is the hardest thing to do as a clinic ages, anywhere, even if you take the lower number, the 100 million Americans that don't go to a dentist, even if we drive a few percent of that, that's a multi-billion-dollar growth opportunity for dentistry at large. And then that's more or less how we convinced our investors that this is worth pursuing.
What trends in preventative dental care excite you most?
There's a lot of innovation. There's a lot of AI being applied. Some of the companies, like there's one company, one of the co-founders, actually an advisor for us, Dr. Kyle Stanley. They have really impacted the way we're finding lesions using AI and X-ray. So that's Pearl. That's one of the companies. There's other ones out there. They did a big raise last year in August. I think at a 400 million valuation. Uh, so that's very exciting. The challenge with that still is that even though you find things early, especially between teeth where X-ray works really well, it doesn't have to go through too much enamel. You don't know if that's arrested lesion or if it's an actively progressing lesion. So if it's arrested, and about 40% of lesions arrest, you could be drilling a tooth that doesn't need to be drilled. Some of that could be very well leading to over-treatment. And our whole idea is avoid drilling. And that's what dentists are being taught in dental school. Unless it's already into the dentin or pulp, wait and watch is what they're teaching. And that's a two-edged sword as well, because now you might be waiting until it gets worse. And then you still have to drill it, or you might get have to do a root canal. So the whole idea is that if you can find it early enough and treat it while it's still only in the enamel, then you can truly be preventative. And that, to me, is the ultimate goal of dentistry, is to really benefit the patient. And what we're teaching our dental practitioners is, and especially hygienists who are huge proponents, of course, of oral health. That's going to really shift. We're seeing a coming together between medicine and dentistry. Tradition is completely separated. So I haven't mentioned her yet, but my wife is a key partner in the business. She's our VP of Clinical Affairs. She's a medical doctor, and she will be the first to admit that as a medical doctor, when you learn about the mouth, you look past the teeth to learn about the mouth. So dentistry and medicine have been very separate, but for quite some time now, people have been recognizing the oral and systemic health connection, where many things that begin in the mouth lead to diseases downstream. It's the gateway to our bodies. And we heard the saying, you are what you eat. That recognition could potentially very much propel healthcare to see really oral health become more important overall.
Absolutely. So, what's going to be crucial to get right in the next year?
Yeah, so we really have to get this Series A done so we can then scale up and roll out globally. So we're doing a fairly modest Series A, 4 million. We're trying to raise. That gets us set up to go to the next step. And first, we're proving this out in the US. We're getting a really warm reception from a lot of dentists saying, and patients saying, wow, we have some videos on our website that is GreenMark.bio, bio, a patient that had 13 years of sensitivity and is gone with one or two doses, and even air sensitivity. So she is actually a dental assistant in the Chicago clinic. She is so happy with this product. Again, we hadn't designed the product for that at all. So that's what you call Bloombergen, or maybe we call it sometimes dumb Dutch luck. But that's really exciting to see that. And then another dentist who's using it on a white spot that's soft. When a white spot is soft, they sometimes will go around with the what I affectionately call Captain Hook, right? This Explorer. Well, dentists are now taught you should not be sticking that sharp Explorer inside those soft lesions because you're going to actually make it cavitate. And as soon as it's cavitated, then you got to drill it and fill it. But when you kind of use the back of your Explorer, you notice that area is soft. When they actually applied this product for multiple weeks, then it came back completely glassed over. So those are some really exciting things we're seeing, and we want to see a lot more of that.
So if we were to have this conversation again in 12 months, what would make you feel it's been a successful year?
We continue our sales continue to go up. We fulfilled 14,000 of these now, these packages. So we are working on several other deals right now. So our sales have really gone up, and we are ready to go public on TSX Ventures. Because what we said is if we get 3 quarters of successive sales growth, then we'll have the requirements to take this public on TSX Ventures. And as I always say, almost everybody has teeth. So this is a huge opportunity to impact. And rather than charging an arm and a leg for it, we want to make this very affordable and available to everyone.
Absolutely. Well, thank you. That's it for today's episode of A Healthier, Happier You, the people working to make it happen. A huge thank you to Dr. Bloombergen for sharing his insights and the amazing work GreenMark's doing to help people live healthier, happier lives. If you enjoyed this conversation, make sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with someone who could benefit. And if your brand or business make an impact in health, wellness, or personal care, we'd love to help you grow. Connect with me at luxhammer.com. Thanks for listening. Until next time, stay healthy, stay happy, and keep making a difference.
Thank you, Evan.